Hey, welcome to a new series of videos on building the job application form with Django. So far we have created a job application app in Django with a views.py content as you see in here, urls.py, we added this URL patterns, we added a module, the form module to our models.py file, and we also modified the settings .py file of the MySite project. So these are the data, the configurations of the project. And so that's what we have so far, and that, if we run that with python manage.py run server and we visit that web page, we will see this. So the hello text, which corresponds to the content of templates index.html, this one in here. So today we're going to work on the index.html template to get the data from the user, store them in the database, send an email to the user, and also create an admin interface. So let's start by implementing the application form on the HTML part. Let's complete this index.html file in the next video. I'll see you there. Hey, welcome back. In this video we will work on the index.html file. So currently this renders this text here, hello, which corresponds to that h1 tag there. And we want to implement the job application form, which is the same form we had with the Flask app. So if I open the Flask app now, and if I run this, you don't have to open your own Flask app, you can just watch me. I just want to remind you what this app consisted of. So that's the job application form, and this form is constructed by that index.html template in the Flask app. So I'm in the Flask app now. So what I'll do is I'll just copy the index.html file, which is inside the templates directory. So copy it, and then I'll go to my Django application, which we are working on, and click on templates, right click, paste, OK, and overwrite to overwrite our existing index.html. So what I just did is I just copied the index.html file from my Flask app to my Django app because the code is 99% similar. We have to change only two things from this code. So if you don't have this code, you can find it attached in the lecture resources in this video. And I'm also going to go through the code very quickly to explain it if you want some more information, more detailed walkthrough on this code. You have to go in the previous app 16, where we built the Flask application form. So let me see now what we have on the Django side. So that the URL corresponds to the Django app. Let's reload it. If you still see the same output, then you want to go to the terminal, Ctrl+C to stop the app, and then python manage.py run server again to execute it. So visit the page, and then you should see some updates. So that code, that index.html code, is giving us this error, right? So the error is in line 46. You see it here highlighted, line 46 of index.html. In line 46 index.html, so this line here should be removed because this was a feature of Flask, get flash messages. With Django we show the messages differently, so please delete that. And you also want to delete the end with line because that line pairs with the line we just deleted, so please delete that as well. Go here, refresh, send. So now it looks like we've got the app interface. It's looking exactly like the Flask app, depending on what browser you open it, of course. So let me go to Chrome, paste the URL here. Yeah. So that's what we've got. Let's fill in the data. Don't expect it to work, but we can try it. Submit. we've got this error, CSRF verification failed. This is a security feature we need to add in Django. So you want to go back to the index.html template and locate the form tag, which should be around here. Yeah, line 11, form method is equal to post. And you want to create a new line, and below there you want to write curly brackets, percentage, in between you want to say CSRF underscore token. This is a security feature you add to Django. And so let's try again. Click the URL, reload it, fill in the data, submit. This time you'll see no error. However, nothing will happen. You'll not see any output here, no messages, and of course nothing will be stored in the database. So if I refresh the job application form table here, of course we'll not see the data there because we haven't implemented yet anything. So this code now, let me quickly explain the index.html code, and then later on we connect this code to our views.py file, right? So views.py is here under job application. So let me quickly go through this code. Again, if you want more detailed explanation, you have to watch the videos in the Flask app where I cover this index.html file. So we have this HTML doctype tag, which is standard. Then we open the HTML tag in here and we close that here down below. And then we have the head tags. Opening here, closing here, so that's a head element containing some metadata such as the link to the Bootstrap CSS file, which applies that nice styling. You know, you see these nice looking buttons here and radio buttons and so on. That happens through Bootstrap. Then we have the body tag. Body contains all the visible elements, so not metadata but actual elements you see here, such as the first name, label, this input box, the other label and the input box, and everything that you see here. So there we go, that's the job application form h1 tag, this one here. Then we have the form, this basically symbolizes the entire form. And then inside form we have the different widgets, such as the first name label with its widget, so the first name label and the widget, the input widget. And then we have the other last name label, and then we have the email, we have the date available, start date, and then we have all those radio buttons. So that here corresponds to that part: employed, unemployed, self-employed, student. Lastly, we have the button, this one in here, and then we have this part here. This is a conditional. This will display a message below the button when the user presses the button to submit the data successfully. Then we show that message here. Now the message doesn't display because we need to add something else, right? There we close the form tag, which we open up here, right? So we have this hierarchy structure. That's the closing tag of form. This is also a closing tag of a division. That's the division. We close everything here. And then we have some links to JS files, JavaScript files. And this makes possible the displaying of that message which we'll implement later. So the message will display dynamically below the submit button, just here. Right. Then we close the body tag, which we open up further up, and we close the HTML tag, and that's the index.html template. So in the next videos, we will get the data from the user. So whatever the user enters here, we'll capture them in the views.py file. We will get them as strings and then store them in the database. Let's do that in the next videos. See you. Hey, welcome back. In the previous video, we built the code for index.html. Now we want to go to views.py, which is under job application. It is in views.py where we return the index.html file. And we do that through this function, and in this function we should now get the values of those widgets, meaning that whatever the user enters here, like rdid, we want to capture that string in here, that text, we capture it as a string. So if I bring here the Flask form app, which we built previously in the course, you'll see that here we also have this index function, which starts with if request.method is equal to post. And then we get the values of each input widget, and we store those in variables, right? So similarly in Django, let's go back to Django. Similarly here, we want to check if request.method is equal, so make sure to have two assignment operators, so if that is equal to the post string. Because we have two types of HTTP requests. One is a GET request when we press the enter key in our URL, right? That's a post request. The site is not running because now we have some syntax error here, the code is not complete. But what I'm trying to say is that this is a GET request, which means we are getting data in our browser, we are getting that form to be displayed in our browser. That is a GET request. But then when we fill in the data and we press that submit button, which should be somewhere in here, that is a post request. So as a user, as a visitor of the website, when you press that button, you are doing a post request. You are posting data to the server, to the Django app. So this is what we're doing here. We're checking if the user is pressing a button, if the user is making a submit request, in other words. If that's the case, then we create some variables such as first name is equal to form dot. What is form? Form is something we need to create, actually. So just above this line, you want to say form is equal to contact form, which is a class that we'll need to create. So in contrast to Flask, getting the data with Django is a bit different. We need to create a new class, and we'll call this class contact form. Now this class should be created inside job application, right? So right click over job application, go to new and go to Python file, and let's name this forms. So that will create a new forms.py file. So make sure that forms.py is in the same directory with views.py, which is the job application directory, right? And inside forms.py, we need to import from Django, import forms. And then class contact form, forms.form. We inherit from the form class of the forms module. Forms is a module of Django, right? And so we'll create a class here and then import this class from views. So in views, we say from forms import contact form, or you can say application form to be more clear what this is. So let's change it to application form since we have this job application, right? So class application form, we import that class in here and we call it in here. So let's define the class. First name is equal to forms.char field with a max length of 80. Wait, but didn't we actually write this already? So does this recall anything? Well, yes. In the models.py file, we already wrote something like what we're writing now. So, but this here in models.py is the model for the database table. And this here is the model for the application form, which happen to be the same, right? So what we should do here is we can just copy all these lines from the models file. So I'm in models.py here. I copy these. I go to forms.py, delete that, and paste those lines in here. And then, of course, you want to change models to forms. So the forms module also have these classes, char fields, etc. Now, there's also another way which would avoid having to write the code again, but this method has more pros because the process is more manual, but it gives you more control so that you can distinguish between the modules and the forms. So if you want to change something in the forms, then this method makes it possible. So we do have duplicate code, but that's fine. And it's also good for you as a starter in Django. So once we have this application form class, so application form, which inherits from form, and then we import application form from within views, we import it, then we instantiate it here under if request method post, and then we use that instance form dot cleaned data square brackets first name. So form.cleanData contains a dictionary. So that dictionary looks something like, first name has John, let's say John input some data, then it has another last name, key, Smith perhaps, and so on. So this dictionary is constructed by Django and stored in form.cleanData, so that will give us the value of the first name key of that dictionary. So we do the same with Ctrl D or Command D, you duplicate that and do last name. Duplicate it again, this will be email. So these strings here, this corresponds to index.html, the name of each widget. So we have the input widget for the first name, right? And this has as name first name. The other one has last name, email, date. So make sure that these names correspond to what we're writing in views.py. So that is the date, the next one, right? Then we have occupation. Occupation is occupation. So again, duplicate occupation. So at this point, we should be able to get the user's data inside these variables. But there is one more thing we need to add, and that is the form validation. You have to validate the form using an if conditional block here. If form is underscore valid. So if that's the case, you want to execute all these. So select all these lines and press tab to indent them under the if condition. And then you also want to add here an argument for this class, because this class inherits from the form class, and the form class expects an argument, and that argument is request.post, a post object. And yeah, with this we can go to the site, reload, and see what we've got. So the app is not running. When you see this, there is an issue which doesn't let the app run at all. And you'll see that error in here. Module not found error. No module named form in line 2 of views.py, right? Which takes us here. Views.py line 2. There's no module named forms. That's because we need to add a dot here. Since forms is a local file we have in this directory, so job application, so to be able to import that local file, you should use that dot. Otherwise, Django is trying to import something from the root directory, which is app17 Django form. But we want to import forms.py, which is inside this directory, job application. So the directory where views is also located. In that case, we use .form. So .forms import application form, and then we go to reload the page again, and now we see the form. So let's fill in some data, but let's actually print out just to see if we got the first name correctly, for example. So just first name and reload first, reload, so that it reads the new change, and then fill in the data, press submit, go to PyCharm and search here, look for the name you entered, so Ardit in my case. So this was printed out by this line. That means we were able to fetch the data, the user entries successfully, and store them inside variables. So let's close this video at this point. So as a wrap up, what we just did in this video is we created an application form class inside forms.py, and then we imported that application form class, we instantiated it here, we validate it here, and then we extract the user values in these lines out of that form instance using the cleaned data dictionary. And then we store all of these in variables, and now next step is to store these values in the database. Let's do that in the next video. See you there. Hey, we're here with another video where we will store these data to the database. To do that, after the occupation line, we want to access the form class dot. Now, forms should be imported from dot models import form. What is form? Form is in models.py. This is a database model, so we created this yesterday. So that is the model which creates the database. Don't confuse this with the forms model. This is application form, this is just form. So we import that in views dot models import form, and then we access the objects property dot create. First name is first name, so this gets a series of arguments, so these correspond to the columns of the database table, right? First name is the column of the database table. The value of this column should be equal to the value of this variable, first name, right? So let's do the same for last name, comma, go to the next line, email, date, occupation is also occupation. So this line should be able to store the data in the database. So let's try it. Run the app if you haven't done so already. So let me quit it and run it again, perhaps just so that we have a fresh execution, even though it's not necessary. So let's go here, reload, fill in the data, employ it, and let's see what happens. We've got an error. Oh, keywords email, sorry. I have a typo here. Email. I changed that to email. Save with Ctrl S or Command S, reload, and again submit. So no errors this time. So now I want to open DB browser for SQLite, and I want to go to the database file in my app17 Django form db.sqlite3. So I'm opening this db.sqlite3 file, right, which is in your project root directory. I want to go to the job application form table. And there are the data. So there we go. Right, so that's working good. And next, let's display a message here to tell the user that the data was submitted successfully. Let's go to PyCharm, views.py, and you want to import from Django.contrib import messages. So messages is a Django module which allows you to display messages dynamically on your web pages. So let's go here and delete that print function. We don't need it anymore. And say messages, so the module we just imported, .success. This is a function that gets the request. The request is this here, right? We are inside index. Request goes as the first argument, followed by the message you want to display, which could be something like form submitted successfully. So let's go back again, reload, fill in the data, submit. And there we go. We got the message displayed correctly. Form submitted successfully. And let's check DB. I'll do a refresh here. So there we go. We have another entry. Right. If you refresh the page, that message should go, so now you can fill in the data again. And yeah, that concludes this video. We were able to store the data in the database with this line and also show a message with this line. Next is we want to send out an email. So let's do that in the next videos. So thanks for following so far. I hope you're enjoying this and I'll see you in the next videos. See you. Hi, welcome back. In this video, you learn how to send an email through a Django form. More specifically, when the user enters some data here, like that, and then when they press submit, Django should send an email to the user's email address. So that email, the content of that email will contain the data that the user entered. So it's like a confirmation email that we send to the user, letting them know that, oh, you submitted a job application to our company, these are the data you submitted, and so we send that to whatever the user provides here as a email account. So the user can enter any email account here. But for this, you need to have your own email account, and I do suggest to have a Gmail account, although other accounts should work, but I will use Gmail myself. So ideally you need two accounts, one to use as a user and one to use as the email sender address, right? But even if you have one, that will work. So you can use the same email address as a sender and as a receiver. So let's go to Django and see, we need to import from Django.core.mail import email message. This is a class. So this is integrated inside Django. You don't need to use SMTP-lib, the library, because this is a high-level module in Django which actually is based on SMTP-lib, but it makes things easier so that it's a more flawless integration with your Django app. I think it makes sense to have it after we submit the data, right, to the database and before we display a message to the user. So we want to send the email somewhere in here. Let's create a message body string first. Let's use an F string for that. Let's say a new job application was submitted. Thank you. And then here, of course, you can enter multiple data. Well, let's enter first name for now. You can add more. You can use break lines. So if you use like \n, then this will be displayed in the email in the next line. So you'll have like thank you and then In the next line, you'll have the name of the user, so you can use these \n, but I'll just delete it. That's okay, as it is now. So that's the email contents. So we have the variable, but that's just a variable, so we need to enter that variable somewhere. Let's create an email message instance using the email message class we imported up here. So that gets as input the subject, form, submission, confirmation, for example. That will be displayed as the subject of the email that the user will receive in their email address, which they enter here, right? So that's the subject, followed by the message body. So next you should provide the body of the email, and then the receiver to a list of receivers. We only have one, so email, so that's this variable. So we get the email of the user. Whatever the user enters here, we grab that through this code, we store that in this variable, and then we get that value of that variable and we pass it here to this argument. So that will create an instance, email message instance, but we need then to send out that message, that email, using the send method. So email message.send, that should send out the email to the user. Right, but we didn't specify anything about the sender. Where does Django send the email from? Well, you should specify that in settings.py. So settings.py is inside my site, not inside job application, but inside my site, settings.py. So settings.py has a series of configuration elements, and so you can add more configuration values here. In this case, that will be a series of variables, email backend. So you see these variables should be with capital letters, and you should type them exactly as you see it here. So email underscore backend with capital letters. Django will look for these variables when it runs the application, actually when it sends out an email. So you want to specify django.core.mail.backends.smtp.email_backend. So that's a string. Then you want to specify the email host. I'm using Gmail, so that should be smtp.gmail.com. This is the host of the Gmail server. And then email port is 587. Again, this is the port for Gmail. Email use TLS. You want to specify this to true. Email host user, user, that's your Gmail account from which you want to send out emails to the users. So I'm using this app8flask@gmail.com, and then you want to specify the email host password variable. So for this, I have to create a new app in Gmail. So you want to go here, manage your Google account, go to security. You want to go here, make sure you have activated two-step verification, and then go to app passwords. You may be required to enter your Gmail password here. So the password you log into your Gmail account. And then here we want to create an app password which is different from the password you used to log into Gmail. So go to select app, other, pick a name, just write something Django application form, for example, and press on generate. That should give you the app password. So copy that, go to Django, and you want to paste that password in here. So as a string. And that's about how to configure your email address, your sender. email address. So we go back to views.py. Things look good to me, so let's give it a try. Go to the site, reload it first, enter some data, employed, submit. Right, so we got this. But let's see if we actually got the email in our account. So app8django was the email address of the user. And that's the email I received. So a new job application was submitted. Thank you, Ardit. So that corresponds to this message body here. Of course, you can expand this message if you like. So as I mentioned already, you can write like \n and perhaps another \n in here, then followed by last name. So give this a try and see what you'll get. I'll just leave it at this point. I hope this was useful for you, and thanks a lot for following. I'll see you in the next video.